It was 6:42 p.m. on a Wednesday, an ordinary day that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. I'd forgotten my phone at home and doubled back after leaving work late. No calls, no messages, just a quiet buzz in my head telling me something felt *off*. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the silence when I opened the front door, the kind of eerie calm that felt staged. Our home smelled of sandalwood and sage, that earthy scent my wife, Lana, had been obsessed with since she started her healing journey. She turned half the house into a sanctuary of soft cushions, incense burners, and crystal bowls. I used to joke that I lived in a yoga catalog, but this wasn't funny. I called out her name. No answer. My footsteps were muffled by the Moroccan rugs she'd scattered all over the hardwood floors. Then I heard it, a low hum. Not music, human, breathy, intimate. I followed the sound down the hallway like a man chasing a thread in a labyrinth. It led me to the living room. She didn't hear me enter, or maybe she didn't care. Lana was kneeling on a velvet cushion, completely naked, her back arched like a statue in a gallery, elegant, unreal. Her eyes were closed, hands resting on her thighs, palms open, facing the ceiling. Across from her, also naked, was *Illy*, my childhood best friend. His eyes were open, and they were on her. My first instinct was to laugh, not out of amusement, but disbelief. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. I blinked, expecting the image to vanish like a mirage, but it stayed. The dim glow of candles flickered across their skin. Their bodies weren't touching, but the intimacy in the air was thicker than steam. What the hell is this? They both turned. Lana didn't flinch. Eli had the nerve to look embarrassed, even covered his lower half with a throw pillow like modesty mattered now. "John, you weren't supposed to be here yet," Lana said softly, like I'd interrupted a meeting. Not, "I'm sorry, *. Not, "This isn't what it looks like, *. Just a calm observation that my presence was inconvenient. Eli stood up first. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to kill him. This was the guy who stood beside me at my wedding. The guy who shared my dorm room, who stayed up with me the night I found out my mom had cancer. And now he was here, naked, in my home, across from my wife, vibrating on some spiritual frequency like this was just a session. Lana finally rose, unbothered by her own nudity. She looked powerful in a way I hadn't seen before, untouchable, unashamed. "It's not what you think," she said. "We were aligning energy, not having sex." I almost laughed again. "Aligning energy," I echoed, "with your legs wide open and a guy I used to call my brother watching you like a damn sunrise." Eli muttered something about sacred polarity work and non-sexual intimacy, but I couldn't hear anything over the roar in my ears. I stared at the woman I'd been with for 9 years, married for 5, and realized I didn't know her, not even a little. She used to be a marketing exec who watched true crime documentaries and made fun of my fantasy football obsession. Now she was this ethereal goddess who spent her weekends at tantric breathwork, retreats, and hosted moon circles with women who called themselves priestesses. I wanted to believe it wasn't cheating. I needed * to believe that, because the alternative was too grotesque, too pathetic. I'd been a fool, a placeholder, a safe masculine container, as she'd once described me to her followers *. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. That pause was my answer. "It's not about sex, John. It's about awakening the feminine essence. It's about transcendence," she finally said. "In betrayal," I snapped. "Let's not forget that part." Eli opened his mouth to speak, and I cut him off. Just don't, you out now." He picked up his clothes, didn't argue. That hurt even more. He didn't even try * to defend himself. Just accepted it, like this was all inevitable, like I was the one who had missed the memo. After he left, I sat on the couch, still trembling. Lana stayed standing, arms crossed over her chest like I was the one being unreasonable. "You've been distant, John. You shut down every time I try to connect with you on a deeper level. I needed something more. And you found it in him." It wasn't about him, it was about me, about what I needed to remember I'm alive. And what am I, Lana? Furniture, a tax write-off, a breathing ATM machine with no soul. She didn't answer. In that silence, something inside me cracked. The kind of crack that doesn't make a sound but rearranges the architecture of who you are. I stood up, walked past her, and went straight to the bedroom. I didn't pack. I didn't scream. I just lay down and stared at the ceiling, wondering how many other nights she'd been transcending with someone else while I worked overtime to pay off the kitchen remodel. I wasn't ready to face it, not yet. But the truth was already crawling through my bones. This wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the first one I saw *. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No incense, no humming bowls, no whispers of ancient rituals. just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faraway sound of a neighbor mowing their lawn. I lay there for a long time, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. It looked like a wolf, mouth open mid-howl. Fitting, Lana wasn't in the bedroom. Her side of the bed was untouched. I got up, half expecting to find her gone, bags packed, a note left in her perfect cursive explaining how she had to follow her truth or let go to grow. But she was still there, downstairs, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a cup of tea, dressed this time, draped in one of those oversized knitted shawls that made her look like a monk from a Pinterest board. She didn't look up as I came down the stairs. "I didn't sleep," she said quietly, her voice floating like fog. "Good," I replied. "Neither did I." She finally looked at me then, eyes tired but not guilty. I wanted guilt. I deserved guilt, but what I saw in her face was worse, clarity. As if everything that happened the night before wasn't a crisis, it was necessary. To her, this was a natural progression, a shedding of skin. A rebirth, and I was the dried husk she was leaving behind. "I'm sorry you had to find out like that," she said. I laughed under my breath. "You think that's the part that hurts, how I found out?" She set her tea down gently. "No, I know this hurts, but maybe now we can stop pretending." "Pretending?" I asked, my voice rising. "Pretending what Lana? That we were married, that we had something real. That when I came home and kissed you goodnight, you weren't already somewhere else, on a damn astral plane with my best friend." She flinched a little at that. Not much, just enough for me to see I'd struck something real. "You've been emotionally absent for years, John," she said, her tone clipped now, brittle around the edges. "You shut me out, you retreat into work, into logic, you don't feel anything. I needed more. And you didn't think maybe, I don't know, talking to me like a human being might help before stripping down and aligning energies with someone I shared bunk beds with at camp." I paced the room, fists clenched. My breath was shallow, I felt like I was drowning in the air. "I tried," she whispered. "I asked you to come with me to retreats. You laughed. I asked you to open up more. You gave me facts instead of feelings. I begged you to go to couples therapy. You told me we didn't need it." That part hurt because it was true. I remembered all of it. The little ways I'd brushed her off, convinced myself I was being practical, reasonable. I believed being a good man meant paying the bills, not cheating, remembering birthdays, fixing things when they broke. I didn't know she wanted more than that. Or maybe I didn't want to know, but none of that justified what she did. "So what now?" I asked. "We talk it out over more tea, schedule a spiritual exorcism for our marriage, or are you planning to run off into the mountains with Eli in a singing bowl?" "I think we need space," she said. "Of course you do. I'm not saying we're done, but I can't stay here and pretend this can be healed overnight, not without you doing the work." I stared at her for a long time. I didn't see the woman I married anymore. That woman laughed at bad rom-coms and played Uno with my nieces and used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. This version of her was made of wind and smoke and unspeakable truths. "I'll leave," I said finally. "I'll give you space. You want a soul-deep reckoning. You got it." I packed a single duffel bag, just essentials. I left my wedding ring on the dresser, not because I was done, but because I needed to understand who I was without it. Who I was before her, before Eli, before this slow, quiet collapse of everything I thought was solid. As I walked out the door, she didn't cry, she didn't chase after me. She just sat there, surrounded by her candles and cushions, like a high priestess watching a sacrifice walk itself to the altar. I stayed at a motel that night, the kind with stiff sheets and humming neon lights. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything, her voice, his face, the naked stillness between them. And beneath all that, the echo of the man I used to be, screaming to wake up from this living nightmare. The next morning, Eli texted me. "I owe you an explanation. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "You've got 10 minutes, make them count." We met at a diner 2 towns over, a place we used to go when we were kids, back when we ditched school and thought mozzarella sticks were gourmet cuisine. I got there early, sat in a booth facing the door. I didn't order anything. Just drank water and stared at the napkin dispenser, imagining all the ways this could go sideways. When Eli walked in, he looked wrong, not nervous, not even ashamed, just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from sleepless nights, but from holding onto something too long. He slid into the seat across from me without a word. We sat in silence for nearly a minute before I broke it. "You have 10 minutes, I said. "Start with why." He looked up, eyes sunken but clear. I didn't plan for it to happen, I swear. It just evolved. "Stop, don't use that word like this is some kind of enlightened progression," I snapped. "You slept with my wife in my house. After years of calling me your brother, start there." He nodded, eyes dropping. I know how it looks, and I'm not going to insult you by denying it. He took a deep breath, then leaned forward, his voice lower. Lana came to one of my workshops a year ago, the one on tantric intimacy and shadow healing. Oh, for F, I rubbed my face, trying not to explode. She was different from the others, he continued. She was guarded but starving for connection. We started talking after sessions, then texting. I told her I wouldn't cross any lines, that I wouldn't touch her, and for a while I didn't. I stared at him, unable to decide if I wanted to scream or laugh. So what changed? She asked me to guide her through an energy alignment. She said you weren't willing to be present with her emotionally. That you mocked what she believed in. And you believed her, I asked. You know me. You've known me for over 20 years. You think I'm some cold, unfeeling robot who deserves to be blindsided like this. He shook his head quickly. No, that's not what I think, but you do have walls, John, big ones. Lana, she saw that and she was drawn to people who didn't. Mind you, he didn't deny it. The first time we got physical, it was emotional, not sexual. We were clothed. There was crying, breathwork, touch, but do not sanitize this for me, Eli, I said coldly. You broke something. You didn't just sleep with her. You ripped apart the foundation of 2 decades of friendship. And for what? A deeper connection. He looked down, ashamed for once. I thought I was helping. I really believed I was helping her heal. You're not a healer. You're a parasite with a yoga mat. That shut him up. The waitress came by and asked if we wanted anything. I ordered black coffee. Eli didn't speak. You know what the worst part is? I said after she walked away. I'm not even surprised. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I think I knew asterisk. You two always had a weird vibe. I just didn't want to see it, because trusting you felt safer than not. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said, but you did asterisk, and you kept doing it. You let it happen right under my nose. That's not a mistake. That's a betrayal with full intent. He nodded slowly. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I don't, I said, but you're going to hear this before I walk away for good. You didn't just take my wife. You took the only person I thought would be by my side when everything else fell apart. And you did it with a smile, behind a mask of healing and truth. That's worse than theft. That's spiritual asterisk gaslighting. I stood up, tossed a 20 on the table. He stayed seated, staring at the Formica tabletop like it could absolve him. As I walked out, I realized something strange. I wasn't just angry, I was asterisk empty. Like the part of me that once trusted unconditionally had finally died. And in that emptiness, I felt something new, something sharper than rage and colder than sadness. Clarity. When I got back to my motel, I sat down and opened my laptop. Not to scroll through memories or look at photos of better days. I opened a blank document. At the top, I wrote, divorce. What I need to protect asterisk. Because for the first time in months, I knew exactly what I had to do. The next few days blurred together in a haze of paperwork, phone calls, and awkward conversations with people who had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. I told my boss I was taking a leave of absence. Said I had personal matters to handle. He didn't ask questions, just gave me a sympathetic nod that somehow made me want to punch a wall. I met with a divorce attorney on a Friday afternoon. Her name was Claudia, sharp as a blade, with a calm demeanor that told me she'd seen every version of this heartbreak play out 100 times before. She's not contesting the split, Claudia said, flipping through the file I brought. But she is requesting to keep the house, claims it's part of her spiritual sanctuary and essential to her work as a coach. I nearly choked, her asterisk sanctuary. She turned my living room into a naked temple with my best friend. Claudia didn't flinch, just underlined something and continued. You're legally entitled to half the property, more if you can prove emotional distress or infidelity, especially given that your name is solely on the mortgage. She's the one who cheated, isn't that enough? She looked up, emotionally. Yes, legally. It's harder to prove unless she admits to it in writing or you have evidence. I thought of Eli's text messages, the ones that started off innocent and slowly bled into something intimate, the kind of messages you don't send unless there's fire behind the curtain. I might have something, I said, but I'm not going to play dirty. I don't want revenge. I want closure. Claudia gave a small nod, scribbled a note, then leaned back in her chair. John, I'll do everything I can to protect your interests, but I'm going to tell you something a lot of people don't want to hear. There's no clean break when love dies in betrayal. You're going to bleed either way. The goal here isn't to stop the pain, it's to make sure it serves you. I walked out of her office and sat in my car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. I thought of all the times Lana had sat beside me there, barefoot after yoga, sipping iced coffee and talking about her clients' trauma cycles. I wondered if she saw herself as a victim in this too. If she truly believed she was healing while gutting the one person who stood by her through everything. That night, I went home for the first time in a week. I'd left her the house temporarily while we sorted things out, but I needed something, some closure or confrontation, I wasn't sure which. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, lighting a bundle of sage. I nearly laughed. "You really think that smoke is going to cleanse what happened here?" She didn't look at me. "It's not for you." That stung more than I expected. "I came for the journals," I said. "Mine, and the box of photos in the closet. I want my memories back." She finally turned. "You're not the only one who's grieving, John. You don't get to grieve the thing you killed," I snapped. Her expression twisted, maybe guilt, maybe just annoyance that I was disturbing the spiritual balance of her airspace. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, "but I had to choose myself." "Funny, you did choose yourself. You chose Eli, big difference." She flinched at that, then looked away. "You'll never understand, you're not open." "No, I'm just not delusional. She stepped closer. "You were so closed off for so long, you never let me in." "I let you in every day. I built a life around you. I bent myself backward to give you space, time, support. But it was never enough, was it? Because I was mystical I didn't speak in riddles and light candles at moonrise." Her voice cracked. "It wasn't about that. It was exactly about that. You wanted more than I could give. And instead of talking to me, you found someone who could talk like you and you burned everything down for it." We stood in the silence, staring at each other like strangers. Finally, I stepped back. "I'll be out in 20 minutes. Please don't be here when I come back for the rest." I walked to the bedroom and closed the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I packed, not from anger, from grief. From the quiet realization that the person I once loved with everything I had didn't exist anymore. Or maybe she never did. I found my old journal at the bottom of the drawer. The leather was cracked, the pages yellowed. I opened it and read a random entry from our second year of marriage. She laughed today when I told her I loved her laugh, said no one had ever said that before. "I think I'll spend the rest of my life chasing that sound." I closed the book and sat on the edge of the bed. That sound was gone, and I wasn't going to chase ghosts anymore. I stayed with my cousin Mark for a while after that. His place was a mess, socks on the couch, pizza boxes doubling as coasters, but the chaos was comforting. There were no incense sticks, no spiritual rituals, no passive-aggressive affirmations taped to the fridge. Just beer, bad TV, and someone who didn't ask too many questions unless I needed him to. He knew something had gone horribly wrong. Everyone in my circle did. The silence around my marriage had become louder than any confession could be. Friends stopped asking, "How's Lana?" and started offering awkward hugs and half-hearted jokes like, "At least you're free now, right?" I smiled through it. But every one of those smiles was a lie. The nights were the worst. I'd lie on that lumpy pull-out couch and stare at the ceiling, just like I did at the motel, replaying everything in my head. Lana's face when I found her, Eli's cowardice, my own blind loyalty. I used to think love meant endurance, that if I stayed long enough fought hard enough, I'd earn some kind of reward, like peace or forgiveness or at least understanding. But I learned the truth too late. Some people don't want partners. They want reflections of themselves, echo chambers who clap when they speak their truth but never challenge the logic behind it. Lana didn't want my love. She wanted worship, devotion without scrutiny, intimacy without responsibility. Eli, he was just the easiest vessel for that delusion. A man so drunk on his own perceived enlightenment, he couldn't see how deeply he'd lost his moral compass. Then one night my phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. It was a number I didn't recognize. The message was short. "She's not doing well, you should come." I stared at it for a long time, then finally typed back, "Who is this?" A minute passed. "Her mother, I'm in town, please, she won't talk to anyone." My stomach sank. I hadn't spoken to Lana's mother in over a year. She and I had always been cordial but never close. The fact that she was reaching out meant something was seriously wrong. I didn't answer, I just threw on clothes, grabbed my keys and drove. Lana's mother met me outside the house. She looked older, worn. Grief had a way of aging people, and she wore hers like a second skin. "She hasn't left the bedroom in 2 days," she said. I found her barely conscious. She'd been fasting, said it was part of a cleansing ritual, but what? She was delirious, John. She thought you were still here. I walked inside slowly. The air was thick with incense and something else, sweat maybe, decay. The energy that once made the house feel like a sanctum now felt haunted, like the walls were tired of being lied to. I knocked on the bedroom door, no answer. "Lana," I called out, still nothing. I pushed the door open gently. She was curled in the middle of the bed, blankets tangled around her like vines. Her hair was matted. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard my voice. "John," she croaked, "are you real?" I stepped inside. "I'm real." She started crying, not the soft, spiritual kind of crying she'd done during rituals, but the ugly, shaking sobs of someone who had finally run out of illusions. "I ruined everything," she whispered. "I thought I was evolving, ascending, but I was just escaping. I didn't know how lost I was." I sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch her. "Why now?" "Eli left," she said. "He said I was too much, that I was clinging, that I was energetically draining him." I closed my eyes. Poetic justice, spiritual karma, whatever you called it, it had finally made its way home. "I thought he was my soulmate," she went on, "but he just vanished, said I needed to integrate my shadow alone." "Of course he did, Lana," I said gently. "You hurt me more than I thought I could be hurt. You broke something that can't be undone." She nodded slowly. "I know, I don't expect you to forgive me." "I'm not here to forgive," I said. "I'm here because no one deserves to fall apart alone, but this doesn't change anything. We're still getting divorced." She nodded again, slower this time. "But thank you," she whispered, "for coming even now." I stood up. "You'll get through this, not because of crystals or fasting or aligning your womb chakras, but because underneath it all, you're still a person. And people survive." I left before she could say anything else, walked out into the cold morning air and let it bite at my skin. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just breathed asterisk. For the first time in months, I felt light, not because I'd won, not because justice had been served, but because I had finally let go of a life that was never truly mine. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. No courtroom drama, no dramatic testimony, just signatures on paper and a quiet email from Claudia with the subject line, "Decree complete, you're free." Those 2 words hit harder than I expected. You're free. It didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like floating in space with no gravity, no anchor. Lana kept the house her sanctuary, and I didn't fight her on it. I got what I asked for, my savings, my journals, and the one item I truly wanted, my grandfather's vintage watch. Everything else I left behind like smoke from a fire that already burned too hot to salvage. Eli vanished from my life entirely, unfollowed me on social media, stopped replying to mutual friends. I heard through someone else that he moved out west and started teaching at some New Age center in Sedona. I guess betrayal pays well if you dress it in enough white linen and sage bundles. Lana messaged me once after the papers were filed. "I hope you find someone who doesn't just love you, but sees you." I didn't reply, not because I didn't have words. I had asterisked too many, but some chapters aren't worth reopening just to bleed all over again. The months that followed weren't easy. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city, sparse furniture. Clean lines, no incense, no altars, just peace and silence so deep it sometimes bordered on terrifying. I started therapy, not because I wanted to forgive them, but because I had to figure out how I'd let myself become so small. How I turned into a man who ignored red flags because they came with compliments and seductive spirituality. My therapist, a soft-spoken guy named Darren who wore chunky sweaters and asked unsettlingly good questions, didn't rush me. He let me sit in my own discomfort and unearth the root of it all, and slowly I began to see it. Lana wasn't my first heartbreak, she was just the most obvious. But for years, I'd been swallowing emotions like poison pills, believing that being a good man meant being quiet, composed, logical. That vulnerability was a currency I couldn't afford to spend. That love meant showing up and shutting up. I learned something else too. Men like me, we don't break clean. We don't shout in the street or slash tires or burn down houses. We collapse inward, we rot silently. And if we're not careful, we become hollow versions of ourselves, blaming the world for not hearing screams we never made. I didn't want to be hollow anymore. I started writing again, something I hadn't done in years. At first, it was just journaling, fragments, letters I'd never send. Then it turned into stories. Full scenes, dialogue, characters who said the things I couldn't. It helped. It pulled the poison out slowly, like draining a wound. I even ran into Lana's mother at a bookstore once. She looked surprised to see me but smiled warmly. "She's getting better," she said. "Still searching, of course, but more grounded now." I nodded. "I hope she finds what she's looking for." "Do you think you will?" she asked gently. I didn't have an answer then, but now I think I do, because healing isn't a destination. It's not some glowing mountaintop you reach after enough therapy or journaling or solo vacations. It's a slow, quiet return to yourself asterisk, a remembering, a reconstruction of the parts you abandoned to keep someone else comfortable. And one morning, I realized I'd stopped wondering what they were doing. I'd stopped picturing their faces. I'd stopped bleeding. Instead, I stood by my window with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over a city that felt new again. My chest didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt open. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt asterisk reborn asterisk, not because of some mystical awakening, not because someone else poured light into me, but because I chose to sit in the dark long enough to remember my own fire.